The creature had been killing anything that moved for 3 cycles of the twin suns. The colonists on Kepler Station 12 called it simply the Beast, and they had stopped going outside their reinforced walls. 7 workers had died. 2 security guards had vanished. Their weapons lay scattered in the purple grass, bent and broken like toys. Commander Threlvok stood in the observation room, his 4 eyes blinking in sequence as he watched the feeds from the exterior cameras. The creature was out there now, circling the compound. It moved on 6 legs, each one ending in claws that could tear through standard hull plating. Its body was covered in scales that shifted color, sometimes matching the environment perfectly, sometimes blazing with threat patterns of red and orange. "We must evacuate," said Senior Technician Muraset, her voice trembling. "The defense turrets cannot penetrate its hide. Our pulse rifles do nothing but make it angry." "There are 300 colonists here," Threlvok replied. "The nearest evac ship is 8 cycles away. We cannot hold that long. The beast grows bolder each day." "Then we die here," Muraset said. "There is no other option." Threlvok was about to agree when his communication device buzzed. He looked at the identifier and felt something strange move through his 4 hearts. It was a signal from the human vessel that had been scheduled to arrive for a supply run. "Commander Threlvok," came a voice that sounded entirely too casual for the situation. "This is Captain Sarah Chen of the transport ship Wandering Star. We're about 20 minutes out. Your automated beacon says you're in a crisis situation. Want to fill us in?" Threlvok explained everything. The creature's arrival 2 standard weeks ago, its apparent immunity to all their weapons, the deaths, the fear that gripped everyone in the compound. There was a long pause after he finished speaking. "Let me get this straight," Captain Chen said slowly. "You've got some kind of apex predator that's decided your colony is its personal hunting ground, and none of your tech can hurt it." "That is correct." "How big is this thing?" "Approximately 4 meters in length, standing 2 meters at the shoulder." Another pause. Then Threlvok heard something that chilled him to his core. The human was laughing. Sorry, Chen said, her voice still carrying traces of amusement. "I'm not laughing at your casualties. That's terrible. I'm laughing because my crew includes 3 people from Earth, and I can already see them getting excited about this." Excited? Threlvok could not comprehend the word in this context. "Commander, you need to understand something about humans. On our homeworld, we spent hundreds of thousands of years sharing our planet with creatures that wanted to eat us. Big cats, bears, wolves, crocodiles, sharks. Things with claws and teeth that could tear us apart. And do you know what we did? You fled from them." Chen laughed again. "Some of us did at first, but then we started making friends with them. The wolves, we turned them into dogs. The big cats, we've got people who keep lions as pets. The bears, okay, we mostly just learned to avoid those, but give us time. My point is, if there's a dangerous animal anywhere in the galaxy, there's probably a human somewhere who wants to pet it." Threlvok felt his secondary hearts beating faster. "You cannot be serious." "Dead serious. Look, we'll be there in 20 minutes. Just keep everyone inside and let us handle this. Oh, and Commander, do you have any raw meat in your food stores? A lot of it." The Wandering Star landed just as the suns were beginning to set, casting the landscape in shades of purple and gold. Threlvok watched from the observation room as the cargo ramp lowered and 3 figures emerged. Captain Chen was a small woman by human standards, but she moved with the confident stride of someone who had survived worse than an alien predator. Behind her came 2 others, a large male with a shaved head and arms covered in colorful markings, and a younger female with hair the color of fire, and a small device in her hands that she kept pointing at the surrounding terrain. "Marcus, Riley, spread out and find signs of the creature," Chen said. "I want to know its patterns, its den location if it has one, and what it's been eating besides colonists." "On it, Cap," the large male said, and he moved off with a grace that seemed impossible for someone his size. The red-haired woman stayed close to Chen, sweeping the area with her device. "I'm getting biological readings about 300 meters east. Large heat signature. It's watching us." Chen nodded. She didn't seem concerned. "Good, let it watch. We want it curious, not threatened." Threlvok opened a communication channel. "Captain Chen, I must insist that you and your crew return to the compound immediately. The creature is approaching." "I know," Chen said. "That's the plan." "What plan involves letting a deadly predator approach you?" Chen looked up at the observation window and smiled. It was the smile of someone who knew something that others did not. "Commander, my ancestors spent thousands of years learning how to read animal behavior. Every creature in the galaxy operates on the same basic principles: fear, hunger, territory, curiosity. This one has been killing because it's scared and confused. This isn't its home territory. Something brought it here, maybe the same thing that crashed a ship on this planet about 6 months ago." Threlvok felt shock ripple through him. "How did you know about the crashed ship?" "We didn't until just now, but thanks for confirming it. That explains a lot. This creature was probably cargo on that ship, brought here against its will, and now it's alone on a strange world surrounded by beings it doesn't understand. Of course it's aggressive. It's terrified." The red-haired woman, Riley, was pointing at something in the distance. "Contact. It's coming in slow." Threlvok switched to the external cameras and felt his breath catch. The creature was indeed approaching, but not in the charging rush he had expected. It moved carefully, one step at a time, its color-shifting scales muted to a dull gray. Its 6 eyes were fixed on the humans with an intensity that spoke of intelligence, not mindless aggression. Chen did something then that made Threlvok want to scream. She sat down on the ground, making herself small and non-threatening. She pulled something from her pack and placed it on the ground in front of her. It was a piece of raw meat. "Come on," she said softly, her voice carrying across the quiet landscape. "It's okay. Nobody's going to hurt you here." The creature stopped. Its massive head tilted to one side, and for the first time, Threlvok noticed that its scales had shifted to a pattern he hadn't seen before. Soft blues and greens, swirling in patterns that almost looked like questions. "She's insane," Muraset whispered beside him. "The human is completely insane." Threlvok could not disagree, but he also could not look away. 3 days had passed since the humans had arrived, and Commander Threlvok had watched something impossible unfold. The creature that had terrorized his colony, the beast that had killed 9 of his people, was now lying on its side in the cleared area outside the compound, while the large human named Marcus scratched its belly. "I don't understand," Threlvok said for perhaps the 100th time. "This defies all logic." Captain Chen sat beside him in the observation room, drinking something called coffee from a container she had brought from her ship. "It really doesn't, Commander. It just defies your understanding of how predators work." "She was a predator, she killed. She wanted to kill more." "Her name is Luna," Chen corrected gently. "And yes, she killed, because she was scared, hungry, and alone, not because she enjoyed it. Once she understood that we weren't threats, everything changed." Threlvok watched as Luna's massive tail thumped against the ground, sending small tremors through the earth. The creature's scales were displaying those soft blues and greens again, the colors that Riley had identified as contentment. Her 6 eyes were half closed, and a low, rumbling sound came from her throat. "Is that noise dangerous?" Threlvok asked. "That's purring," Chen said. "It means she's happy." "Purring." "Earth cats do it. We think it started as a way for injured cats to help heal themselves, vibrations that promote bone growth and tissue repair. But domestic cats purr when they're content, when they feel safe. Somehow, Luna does the same thing. Convergent evolution across the galaxy. Pretty amazing when you think about it." The 3rd human, Riley, entered the observation room with a datapad in her hands. Her red hair was disheveled, and there were dark circles under her eyes, but she was smiling. "I've finished analyzing Luna's biology," she said, sitting down heavily. "Captain, you need to hear this. She's not just intelligent. She's really intelligent. Her brain structure shows capacity for complex reasoning, emotional processing, and most importantly, pack bonding." "Pack bonding?" Threlvok asked. Riley turned to face him. "Many of Earth's most successful predators are pack animals. Wolves, lions, orcas. They form strong social bonds with their group members, and those bonds help them survive. They hunt together, protect each other, raise young together. Luna's species appears to work the same way. She's not designed to be alone. She's designed to be part of a family." "The crashed ship," Chen said slowly. "You think there were others of her kind on board?" "Almost certainly. When the ship went down, Luna was probably the only survivor. She's been alone for 6 months, grieving, confused, trying to survive on a planet full of beings she couldn't communicate with. No wonder she lashed out." Threlvok processed this information. He thought about the colonists who had died, about the fear that had gripped his people. He wanted to be angry. Part of him was angry, but another part of him looked at the creature outside, at the way she pressed her massive head against Marcus's chest while he murmured soft words, and he felt something else entirely. "What happens now?" he asked. Chen and Riley exchanged a glance. "That's partly up to you, Commander. Luna can't stay here on her own. She needs a pack, a family. We're willing to take her with us on the Wandering Star, but that's only a temporary solution. She needs a permanent home." "You want to keep her, as what, a pet?" "Not a pet," Chen said firmly. "A companion, a partner. There's a difference, Commander, and it matters. Pets are owned. Companions are chosen on both sides. Luna has chosen to trust us. Now we have to earn that trust." Down below, Marcus had stood up and was walking toward the compound. Luna rose to her feet and followed him, her movements surprisingly graceful for something so large. Her scales shifted through patterns of green and blue, with occasional flashes of gold that Riley said indicated excitement. "She follows him everywhere now," Chen observed. "Marcus has a gift with animals, always has. He grew up on a colony world where the local wildlife was just as dangerous as Earth's used to be. He learned early how to read them, how to communicate without words." The main door of the compound opened, and Marcus entered with Luna close behind. Threlvok heard gasps from the colonists in the corridor, saw them pressing against the walls in fear. Luna's scales flickered briefly to orange, picking up on the tension, but Marcus put a hand on her flank and she calmed. "It's okay, everyone," Marcus said, his deep voice filling the corridor. "Luna won't hurt anyone, she's promised." "How can an animal promise anything?" someone demanded. Marcus smiled. "Watch." He pointed to the floor and said clearly, "Luna, sit." The massive creature lowered herself to the ground, her 6 legs folding beneath her with practiced ease. Her eyes swept across the watching colonists, and then she did something that made Threlvok's breath catch. She bowed her head, pressing her nose to the floor in a gesture that was unmistakably submissive. "Good girl," Marcus said, and Luna's tail thumped against the ground. 3 days, Muraset whispered beside Threlvok. 3 days and they've turned our monster into a dog," Chen finished for her. "The universe's most dangerous dog, maybe, but a dog nonetheless. On Earth, we spent about 15,000 years turning wolves into dogs. Turns out we've gotten pretty good at it. With Luna, we just sped up the timeline." Threlvok watched as some of the braver colonists approached Luna cautiously. A young female, one of the children in the colony, reached out a trembling hand. Luna held perfectly still, her scales shifting to soft pink, and allowed the child to touch her nose. The child laughed. The sound was pure and surprised and wonderful. "Her scales are warm," the child announced, "and soft, not hard like they look." "That's right," Marcus said. "They only get hard when she feels threatened. Right now she feels safe. She wants to be friends." More colonists approached. Some still kept their distance, and Threlvok could not blame them. 9 people had died. That was not something that could be forgotten or forgiven easily. But others were reaching out, touching Luna's scales, marveling at the patterns of color that flowed across her hide. "Captain Chen," Threlvok said quietly, "I need to ask you something. Those who died, is there justice for them? Can there be justice?" Chen's expression grew serious. "That's a complicated question, Commander. Luna killed those people. There's no denying that. But she killed them out of fear and confusion, not malice. She didn't understand what she was doing. Does an animal bear moral responsibility for acting according to its nature? On my world, a dangerous animal would be destroyed. On Earth too sometimes. But we've also learned that destruction isn't always the answer. Luna's intelligent enough to understand that what she did was wrong, now that we've been able to communicate with her. She shows signs of what we'd call regret. Whether that counts as justice, I honestly don't know. But I do know that killing her won't bring anyone back, and keeping her locked up forever won't help anyone." Threlvok was silent for a long moment. He thought about the families of those who had died, about the fear and anger they must feel. He thought about Luna, alone and terrified on a strange world, lashing out at everything around her. He thought about the child who had just laughed while touching a creature that could kill her in an instant. "I will speak with the families," he said finally. "They deserve a voice in what happens next, but I will also tell them what I have seen today. Perhaps there is a way forward that honors both the dead and the living." Chen nodded. "That's all anyone can ask for, Commander, thank you." 2 weeks later, the wandering star prepared to depart Kepler Station 12. The situation had changed dramatically since their arrival. Luna had become something like a mascot for the colony, though some still kept their distance. She had learned nearly 100 commands, understood the boundaries of where she could and couldn't go, and had even helped repair some of the damage she had caused during her time as a terrified, isolated predator. But the most surprising development had come from the families of the victims. Threlvok had expected anger, demands for the creature's destruction, calls for justice that could only be satisfied with blood. And there had been some of that, yes, but there had also been something else. The widow of one of the security guards had approached Luna on the 5th day, her 4 eyes streaming with tears of grief and rage. Luna had frozen in place, her scales flickering through confused patterns. The woman had stood before the creature that had killed her husband and simply stared. And then, slowly, Luna had lowered herself to the ground. She had pressed her head against the earth and made a sound that none of them had heard before. It was high and keening, and filled with something that sounded remarkably like sorrow. The widow had fallen to her knees beside the creature. She had placed her hand on Luna's head, and she had wept. Threlvok had watched from the observation room, unable to move, unable to speak. He had never seen anything like it. 2 beings, separated by species and by tragedy, somehow finding a moment of shared grief that transcended everything. Afterward, the widow had sought out Captain Chen. "The creature feels it," she had said. "The weight of what she did. I did not think that was possible." "She's more intelligent than anyone realized," Chen had replied. "More intelligent than we may ever fully understand. She knows she caused pain. She doesn't know how to make it right, but she knows." "Then she must live," the widow said. "She must live, and she must do better. That is how she can honor those who died, by becoming something worthy of the life she has." Not all the families had agreed. Some had demanded Luna's death, and Threlvok could not fault them for it. Grief took many forms, and not all of them led to forgiveness, but enough had spoken in favor of mercy that a consensus had been reached. Luna would live. She would leave with the humans. She would be given a chance to become something more than the frightened, violent creature she had been. Now, as the wandering star's engines hummed to life, Luna stood at the base of the cargo ramp with Marcus beside her. Her scales displayed a complex pattern that Riley had identified as bittersweet. She seemed to understand that she was leaving, that she would not return to this place where she had experienced both her darkest moments and her first steps toward redemption. "Commander Threlvok," Captain Chen said, extending her hand in the human gesture of farewell. "It's been educational." Threlvok took her hand carefully, aware of how fragile humans appeared despite their remarkable resilience. "It has been that, Captain. I confess that I did not expect this outcome when you first arrived." "Neither did I, honestly. I hoped for something like this, but hope and reality don't always align." She glanced back at Luna. "She's special, Commander. I've worked with a lot of animals in my time, helped rehabilitate dangerous creatures that everyone else had given up on. But Luna is different. She's not just learning commands. She's learning why. That's rare. That's precious." "Where will you take her?" "First to a station where Riley can do a full medical workup, make sure she's healthy. Then, I'm not sure. There's talk of a sanctuary on one of the outer colonies, a place where creatures from different worlds are studied and protected. Luna might find others of her kind there if any survive the crash." Threlvok nodded slowly. "I hope she does. No one should have to be alone." Chen smiled. "That's what we're trying to fix, Commander, one creature at a time." Luna approached them then, her movements slow and deliberate. She stopped in front of Threlvok and lowered her massive head until her eyes were level with his. Her scales shifted through a sequence of colors, blues and greens of contentment, yellows of uncertainty, and finally, a deep purple that Riley had never been able to identify. "What does that color mean?" Threlvok asked quietly. "I don't know," Riley admitted. "It's not in any pattern we've documented, I think. I think she might be inventing new ways to communicate, developing a language." Luna held Threlvok's gaze for a long moment. Then she did something that none of them expected. She made a sound, a soft rumbling noise that shaped itself into something almost like a word. "Sorai." Threlvok felt his foreheart stop. "Did she just—" he began. "Oh my God," Riley whispered, her datapad falling from numb fingers. Marcus was grinning so wide it looked painful. "Good girl, Luna, good girl." Luna's tail thumped against the ground, and her scales blazed with gold and green. She turned and bounded up the cargo ramp, disappearing into the ship with the energy of a creature who had finally found her place in the universe. "She's been listening to us," Chen said, her voice filled with wonder. "Every conversation, every word, she's been learning, not just commands but language." Threlvok found his voice. "Is that normal for Earth animals?" "No," Chen said. "No, this isn't normal at all. This is something entirely new. Commander, I think we may have just witnessed the first steps of a species toward true sapience. Luna isn't just learning to communicate. She's learning to think." The implications were staggering. Threlvok watched the wandering star's cargo ramp begin to close, catching one last glimpse of Luna's eyes watching him from the darkness inside. She had killed his people. She had terrorized his colony. And now she had said sorry, had used a word she had learned from watching her captors become her family. What did that mean? What could it mean? "Captain Chen," he said suddenly, "you must keep us informed of Luna's progress. I speak not just for myself, but for the families, for everyone here. We need to know what she becomes." Chen nodded. "I promise, whatever happens, you'll know." The cargo ramp sealed shut. The engines roared, and the wandering star lifted off, carrying with it a creature that had arrived on this planet as a monster and was leaving as something far more complicated, far more wonderful, and far more dangerous than anyone had imagined. Threlvok stood in the fading light of the twin suns and watched until the ship vanished into the purple sky. Behind him, he could hear the colonists returning to their work, their voices carrying a lightness that had been absent for weeks. The beast was gone. They were safe again. But Threlvok knew that this was not the end of the story. It was only the beginning. The humans had done what his people had thought impossible. They had taken a monster and seen past the teeth and claws to find the frightened, lonely creature underneath. They had reached out with patience and understanding instead of weapons and fear, and they had been rewarded with something unprecedented. Perhaps, he thought, that was the true secret of humanity's success. Not their weapons or their technology, though those were formidable. Not their physical resilience, though they survived conditions that would kill most species. No, the secret was simpler than that. Humans looked at monsters and saw potential friends. It was insane. It was reckless. It was the most dangerous philosophy imaginable. And somehow, impossibly, it worked. 6 months after leaving Kepler Station 12, the wandering star docked at Haven Colony, one of the largest sanctuary worlds in the settled galaxy. Luna had grown in that time, not physically but mentally. Her vocabulary had expanded to over 300 words, and she could string them together in simple sentences. More importantly, she had developed what Riley called emotional sophistication, the ability to understand and respond to the feelings of those around her. Captain Chen walked down the cargo ramp with Luna beside her. The creature's scales displayed a complex pattern of blues and greens with threads of nervous yellow running through them. New places still made her anxious, but she had learned to manage her fear instead of letting it control her. "Easy girl," Chen murmured. "These are friends. Everyone here is a friend." "Friends," Luna repeated, her voice a rumbling approximation of the word. "Like pack." "Yes, like pack. A big pack. You'll like it here." The sanctuary director was waiting for them at the base of the ramp. She was a human named Dr. Elena Vasquez, an older woman with gray hair and kind eyes. She had spent 40 years working with dangerous creatures from dozens of worlds, and she showed no fear as Luna approached. "So you're the famous Luna," Dr. Vasquez said, looking up at the massive predator with an expression of pure delight. "I've read all the reports. Riley's documentation of your neurological development is fascinating. We've never seen anything like it." Luna tilted her head, her scales shifting to curious orange. "You read about Luna?" Dr. Vasquez's eyes widened. "The report said you could speak, but hearing it. Oh, this is wonderful. Yes, Luna, I read about you. I've been looking forward to meeting you for months." Luna also looked forward, the creature said carefully. "Captains say Haven have many creatures, different creatures, Luna want to meet." "And you shall," Dr. Vasquez said warmly. "But first, we need to do a medical check and get you settled in your new home. Captain Chen, if you'll follow me." They walked through the sanctuary grounds together, past enclosures that contained creatures from across the galaxy. Luna's head turned constantly, her 6 eyes taking in everything. She made soft sounds of wonder at some of the animals she saw, and once she stopped completely to watch a group of flying creatures with iridescent wings. "Pretty," she said. "Colors like Luna but different. What are they called?" "Those are stellar butterflies from the Andromeda system," Dr. Vasquez explained. "They're attracted to emotional energy. Watch." She stepped closer to the enclosure and focused on feeling happy. The butterflies immediately turned and flew toward her, clustering around the barrier in a swirl of shimmering color. Luna watched with obvious fascination. Then, very deliberately, she focused on the butterflies and let her scales shift to the happiest pattern she knew, the deep golds and greens she displayed when Marcus scratched her belly. The butterflies went wild. They swarmed toward Luna, pressing against the barrier, their wings flashing in response to her colors. It was as if they were trying to communicate with her. "Remarkable," Dr. Vasquez breathed. "She's instinctively mimicking their emotional communication method. The adaptability is extraordinary." Chen smiled. "That's Luna. She picks things up faster than anyone expects." They continued on, eventually arriving at a large enclosure that had been prepared specifically for Luna. It was designed to replicate the conditions of the planet where her species was believed to have evolved, with temperature controls, appropriate vegetation, and a variety of enrichment activities. But what caught Luna's attention was not the enclosure itself. It was the creature waiting inside. Another of her kind, smaller than her, with scales that shifted through shades of blue and silver. It stood at the far end of the enclosure, its 6 eyes fixed on Luna with an intensity that matched her own. "You found another one," Chen said, her voice hushed. "It was difficult," Dr. Vasquez admitted. "When we started searching for survivors from that crashed ship, we thought we'd never find any. But 4 months ago, a colony on the far side of the sector reported a creature matching Luna's species. It had been living in the wilderness, avoiding contact with anyone. It took weeks to capture it without harm." Luna hadn't moved. Her scales were cycling through patterns faster than Chen had ever seen, colors and shapes that seemed to carry meaning beyond anything she could interpret. "Name?" Luna asked, her voice barely a whisper. "We've been calling him Echo," Dr. Vasquez said, "but he doesn't respond to it. He doesn't respond to much of anything, honestly. He's been alone too long. He's forgotten how to trust." Luna stepped forward, pressing against the barrier of her new enclosure. Echo watched her approach but didn't retreat. His scales shifted to match hers, mirroring the complex patterns she displayed. "Luna, go in," Luna said, not a question, a statement of intent. Chen looked at Dr. Vasquez, who nodded slowly. "We expected this. We've designed the introduction protocol." "Luna, go in now," Luna insisted. "Echo is scared. Echo is alone. Luna knows how that feels. Luna can help." Chen put a hand on Luna's flank, feeling the warmth of her scales. "Are you sure? If Echo is as traumatized as Dr. Vasquez says, he might react badly." Luna turned to look at her, and for a moment, Chen saw something in those 6 eyes that took her breath away. Not just intelligence, not just emotion, something deeper, something that looked remarkably like wisdom. "Humans taught Luna," Luna said slowly, choosing her words with care. "Humans showed Luna that fear does not have to become anger. Luna will teach Echo. Luna will show Echo. This is what pack does. This is what family does." Chen felt tears prick at her eyes. She remembered the first time she had seen Luna, a terrified monster circling a colony, killing anything that moved. She remembered sitting on the ground, offering meat, hopping against hope that her instincts were right. "Go on then," she said softly. "Go be a family." The barrier slid open and Luna stepped through into her new home. Echo tensed, his scales flashing with threat patterns of red and orange. But Luna didn't retreat. She didn't show fear. She simply walked forward, slowly and calmly, until she was close enough to touch. Then she did something that none of them had seen before. She lowered her head and pressed her forehead against Echo's. Their scales merged into a single pattern, colors flowing between them like water, communicating in a language that predated words, that spoke directly from one mind to another. Echo's threat patterns faded. His scales shifted to the same calming blues and greens that Luna had learned to associate with safety and trust. He made a sound, high and keening, the same sound of grief that Luna had made when confronted with the widow of her victim. And Luna answered him. She answered him with colors and sounds and the simple act of presence, telling him that he was not alone anymore, that she understood his pain, that together they could learn to be more than their fear. "My God," Dr. Vasquez whispered. "They're bonding. After everything they've been through, after months of isolation and fear, they're bonding." "That's what Luna does," Marcus said, stepping up beside them. "That's what we taught her. That's what humanity taught her. That even monsters can become family if someone is willing to believe in them." Chen watched the 2 creatures settle down together, their bodies curling around each other, their scales displaying patterns of contentment and connection. She thought about the journey that had brought them here, about all the fear and pain and tragedy along the way. But she also thought about the future, about what these creatures might become, with time and patience and love, about what they might teach the galaxy about the nature of intelligence, of communication, of family. The universe was vast and full of wonders, but sometimes, Chen thought, the greatest wonder of all was the simplest one. The wonder of a monster who learned to say sorry. The wonder of a creature who chose love over fear. The wonder of humanity, reaching out across the void, offering friendship to anything that would accept it. Because that was what humans did, that was who they were. They looked at monsters and saw potential friends. And more often than anyone expected, they were right. 5 years later, Luna stood before the Galactic Council, the highest governing body of the known galaxy. 300 representatives from 100 different species filled the vast chamber, their eyes fixed on the creature that had become something unprecedented in the history of sentient life. Luna was no longer the frightened, violent predator that had terrorized Kepler Station 12. She was no longer merely the first of her kind to speak, to reason, to form bonds with other species. She was now officially recognized as the representative of her people, the chroma, named for their color-shifting scales that formed the basis of their complex language. There were 17 chroma now, rescued from across the galaxy. Echo stood beside Luna, his scales displaying patterns of support and solidarity. Behind them stood the others, each one a testament to what was possible when fear gave way to understanding. And behind the chroma stood the humans. Captain Sarah Chen had aged in the past 5 years, but her eyes still held the same warmth and determination that had driven her to sit on the ground before a monster and offer it friendship. Marcus stood beside her, now one of the galaxy's leading experts in interspecies communication. Riley had become a renowned neurobiologist, her studies of chroma cognition revolutionizing the understanding of how intelligence could develop. The Council recognizes Luna of the Chroma, the Council speaker announced, his voice carrying through the chamber. You may present your petition. Luna stepped forward. Her scales displayed a pattern that had taken years to perfect, a combination of colors and shapes that translated into the universal trade language the Council used. 5 years ago, she began, her voice clear and strong, I was a monster. I killed those who had done me no harm. I spread fear wherever I went. I was everything that the civilized galaxy fears about dangerous creatures. She paused, letting her words sink in. Then I met humans. A murmur rippled through the chamber. The relationship between humans and the chroma had become famous throughout the galaxy, but hearing Luna speak about it directly was something different entirely. Humans did not see a monster, Luna continued. They saw a frightened creature, alone and afraid, acting on instinct because I knew no other way. They did not come with weapons and kill me, though they had every right to do so. They came with patience and understanding. They came with food and kindness. They came with the belief that I could be more than my fear. Luna's scales shifted to display the deep purple that had become her signature color, the one she had invented herself to express gratitude and love. The humans call this process domestication. On their homeworld, they spent thousands of years turning dangerous creatures into loyal companions. They took wolves and made them into dogs. They took wildcats and made them into housepets. They transformed predators into partners, monsters into friends. She looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of representatives from species who had lived in fear of creatures like her for millennia. But what the humans taught me is that domestication is not about making something weak. It is about helping something find its strength in connection rather than isolation. The wolf is not weaker for becoming a dog. It is stronger because it is no longer alone. Luna turned to look at the humans standing behind her. At Chen, who had first believed in her. At Marcus, who had taught her to trust. At Riley, who had helped her understand herself. At all the others who had come after, each one adding to the tapestry of relationships that had transformed her people. The chroma were dying, Luna said quietly. We were scattered across the galaxy, survivors of a crashed ship, alone and afraid. Without the humans, we would have remained monsters. We would have killed and been killed, our potential for intelligence and connection lost forever. She faced the council again. But we are not monsters anymore. We are people. We think, we feel, we love. We have language and culture and dreams for the future. And we owe all of this to the humans who looked at us and saw not what we were, but what we could become. The council speaker shifted uncomfortably. The council acknowledges the debt the Chroma owe to humanity, but that is not the purpose of this session. You have come to petition for something specific. Yes, Luna said. I have come to petition for the creation of a new program, a program that will do for other species what the humans did for us. The murmurs in the chamber grew louder. Throughout the galaxy, there are creatures considered too dangerous to live, too violent to coexist with civilized species. They are hunted and killed, or confined in conditions that prevent them from ever reaching their potential. But the Chroma have proven that this approach is wrong. With patience, with understanding, with the techniques that humans have spent millennia perfecting, even the most fearsome creatures can become valued members of galactic society. Luna's scales blazed with gold and green, the pattern of hope and determination. I propose the creation of the Harmony Initiative, a program that will identify dangerous species with the potential for higher intelligence and work to bring them into the galactic community, not through force, not through control, through friendship. The council speaker looked skeptical, and who would implement such a program? The resources required would be enormous. The humans have already volunteered, Luna said. They understand this work better than anyone. It is in their nature. They cannot see a dangerous creature without wondering if it could be a friend. She turned to look at Chen, who stepped forward to address the council. Representatives of the Galactic Council, Chen said, humanity has been in space for 3 centuries. In that time, we have contributed many things to galactic civilization, technology, art, trade, but our greatest contribution has always been our ability to connect with other species, to see past the surface to find common ground. Chen smiled, the same smile she had worn when she first sat down before Luna and offered her a piece of meat. On Earth, we have a saying, there are no bad dogs, only bad owners. What we mean by that is that behavior is shaped by environment, by training, by the relationships an animal has. A creature that seems dangerous and uncontrollable can become gentle and loyal if given the right guidance. She looked around the chamber. The same is true for sapient species. The Chroma were considered monsters because no one took the time to understand them, to teach them, to show them another way. How many other species are out there, right now, being destroyed or imprisoned because we assume they cannot change? The council deliberated for hours. Some species were supportive, seeing the potential that the Harmony Initiative represented. Others were skeptical, pointing to the dangers inherent in working with violent creatures. Still others were openly hostile, viewing the program as a waste of resources or, worse, a threat to their own security. But in the end, the vote came down in favor of the initiative. The margin was narrow, but it was enough. Luna stood on the observation deck of Haven Colony that night, watching the stars. Echo stood beside her, their scales displaying patterns of quiet contentment. The other Chroma were scattered across the sanctuary, resting after the long day. Chen joined them, leaning against the railing and looking out at the universe. You did it, she said softly. You actually did it. We did it, Luna corrected. Luna could not have done anything without humans, without you. Chen smiled. I suppose we make a good team. Best team, Luna agreed. Captain Chen, Luna has question. Ask away. Luna's scales shifted to the deep purple of gratitude. Why? All those years ago, when Luna was monster, when Luna killed and destroyed, when everyone else saw only danger, why did you see something more? Chen was quiet for a long moment. Then she reached out and placed her hand on Luna's flank, feeling the warmth of her scales. Because that's what we do, she said. That's who we are. Humans have always looked at dangerous things and wondered if they could be friends. It's probably insane. It's definitely dangerous. But it's also beautiful in a way. the belief that everything has the potential for good if someone is willing to help them find it. She looked up at Luna, at the creature who had gone from monster to friend to leader of her people. You proved us right, Luna. You proved that the belief is worth holding. And now you're going to help us prove it again and again with every species we bring into the fold. Luna's scales blazed with gold. Luna will make humans proud. Luna will show Galaxy what it means to transform monster into friend. Luna will carry human wisdom to every corner of universe. I know you will, Chen said. That's why I believed in you from the beginning. I could see it in your eyes even when you were at your worst, the potential for something more. They stood together in silence, human and Chroma, looking out at the stars. Out there somewhere were countless creatures waiting to be discovered, waiting to be understood, waiting for someone to look past their teeth and claws and see the friend hiding underneath. And now, thanks to Luna and the humans who had believed in her, they would have that chance. The Deathworld warriors had adopted an alien monster and transformed her into a loyal companion. But they had done something more than that. They had planted a seed that would grow across the galaxy, changing the way every species thought about danger and potential, fear and friendship. They had proven that the universe was not defined by what creatures were, but by what they could become. And that, perhaps, was the most human thing of all.